Today I've got on Nathan Hoole, owner of Dollars Investigations and host of Diary of a Private Investigator podcast. Nathan has been a detective for over 20 years in South Yorkshire Police before going private, where now he's one of the most recognisable PIs in the UK, doing things like surveillance, enforcement, and proper boots on the ground work. We've worked together for a number of years. This is actually the first time we've met face to face. We had phone calls and text, so yeah, it's actually good to touch base. A lot of the projects Nathan works on that require an online investigations aspect is when he'll bring me in. So I'm looking forward to today. I know we proper laugh. I know he knows what he's talking about. So welcome to the podcast, Nathan.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope I'm not the most recognised PI out there because I'm not doing my job properly if I am.
Yes, that's actually not even a greater compliment. Actually, I was trying to pick you up to like build the suspense there, but
No, I think what you're referring to is because I'm on LinkedIn and TikTok and the sort of the social media sort of type things as well. So people who aren't looking for see whether they've been followed or not will probably know my face from that.
yeah, good branding, I'll say, rather than
Yeah,
bad at your
that's
job.
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so me and Nathan back and forth for a while talking about each other's podcasts. Today's my turn to host Nathan, and our format of our podcasts are slightly different. Nathan has the cooler, more free flowing, whereas mine I probably describe as a bit more of a shorter, concise interview. So Nathan, happy to format. If you're happy, I'll just I'll start with the first question.
Yeah, fire away.
Take me back to the first time that you were on a surveillance job as a private investigator for your own company. What was going through your head when you were in the car, first time, alone?
The first thing that went through my head was, why the hell am I doing this on my own? It wasn't so much when I set up my company, it was when I first started in the private sector. So like you said, I'm ex-police. And I wasn't, the surveillance jobs that I did in the police, I ran the jobs as opposed to be the person sat in the car. I had a more management role. But the biggest difference is when you do police surveillance, you generally have 3-4 cars with two people in a car, a motorbike. The jobs that I had, we had the police helicopter up so far away that they didn't know they were being surveilled. We were in a proper control room where we got cameras everywhere. Everything were mapped and tracked, and it was a bit like what you watch on the TV. So I'd gone from that world of proper organisation and backup, and we had a plan B, and we had uniformed officers on standby to have cover stories, to do hard stops, and we had the world at our disposal. So the first job that I got in the private sector, I was on my own on an estate, and I was waiting for a car to leave, and the subject could either go out and left and an exit to another part of town, or out and right and leave a different exit and go somewhere completely different. And all the intelligence is, we think this person is having an affair, follow them and find out who they're having an affair with. And that was the briefing. So you couldn't be more polar apart if you tried with the intelligence led, the disposal of assets that you've got to, we think this person's having an affair, follow them and see what you can get. It was just absolute worlds apart. And it blew my mind. And I was ringing people up afterwards going, is this what we do in private sector? Like, you're on your own? And everyone's going, well, yeah, pretty much. It's not ideal, but because you've got a paying customer, that's 9 times out of 10, that's what they'll pay for. They'll pay for one operative. So it took some adjustment. That was the biggest thing that I took from the private sector.
Part of surveillance is obviously just having a fine level of detail, observation, obviously. Can you think of a time where you personally noticed like a very small detail that most people probably would have missed, and that small detail was something that cracked the case, the project, or the client objective?
Yeah, I'm glad you warned me about this one, because I had to go into the tank to think about a case that I've had where there was a little bit of detail that, without trying to sound big-headed, most people would have missed, and I found the perfect example. So again, and I will say that not all my jobs are affairs. I do other types of surveillance, which I'll come into later on if you give me opportunity. But I was following somebody who was having an affair, and I'll hopefully not give too much details away, but at the end of the day, they got caught. So there you go. So I was following this guy who was having an affair, and we thought he was having an affair with the landlady of a pub. And so I'm following this guy around, and I was, 'cause again, I was on my own, so you got all the tactics are involved. So anyway, we get into a pub in the middle of nowhere. I go in, looking around, can't find him. I'm thinking he's either walked in. I mean, people don't tend to do anti-surveillance in my job, so you don't tend to get him walking in back of a pub, walking straight out at front, or vice versa, and then walking down the road and going in another pub. The person didn't think he was being followed. So I walked in, I'm looking around, can't find him anywhere. So I sit in the most central place I can, eyes on the bar, eyes on the exits, eyes on the toilet. So I'm sat there and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and waiting. I'm thinking, where is this guy? And I see that there's obviously staff stairways. So I'm thinking, all right. So chances are then he's not showing after 15, 20 minutes. He's probably just gone straight upstairs and he's in the flat above the pub. So I'm sat there and I'm waiting out and thinking, well, I hope he has, and I hope I ain't taking a loss. And as I'm sat there, there's a chalkboard to the side, and it has all the staff, and they've got like caricatures of the landlady and what her favourite drink is, and then they've got caricatures of the management and what their favourite drink is, and caricatures of the bar staff and all these funny type things. And then right at the very, very bottom of the chalkboard was this chap's name and a dog, and there was I think there was like a seat in the pub named because this guy sat in his seat all the time with his dog. And it just so happened that the name of the guy who was the local was the name of the subject who I was following. And so I took a photograph and sent it to the client and said, has this person got a dog? And the dog's name was on the chalkboard, and it was him and his dog. And so he was actually leading a double life because he spent a heck of a long time in this pub with the landlord. So he was that well known to be having an affair with the landlord, or landlady rather, that he got his face on the chalkboard. So once I got the photograph of that, it was kind of case cracked. And then I went back the very next morning and got him coming out of the staff exit to his car. So that was one of those fine detail moments.
It's hard to always find, you can only find information that is out there, and you've really got to make sure every stone is unturned for those situations. But it doesn't always obviously go perfectly. Has there been a time where you feel like a situation that maybe, but you've misread it completely wrong, and may not have blown your cover, but like moments if you'd went down that avenue that you thought would have completely sort of blown it?
Yes. So yes, I've got stories for days. So I am one of those rare men that are not into football. It just not interest me at all. I originate from Sheffield, so you've either got Wednesday or United, and in my opinion, both are shit. Can you swear on this podcast, by the way?
Yeah, crack on, mate.
And they're both diabolical. They play terrible football, and the only time I actually used to watch them is when I was paid as a police officer, and I used to watch the crowd because it was more interesting. So I get a job, and it's following a football fan. The wife's gone away for the weekend. The football fan is, don't worry. It was at a time where it was a few years back, and I think Sheffield United and Rotherham United were vying for promotion. And again, if there's any football fans out there listening to this, I seem to believe that they were in the same league and they were both vying for promotion. So there was a derby on, and it was obviously it was a massive thing, a massive local thing. So I deployed to this job, and the job is the area in question was right on the border of Sheffield and Rotherham. So I go to this pub, and all I've been told is a United fan. It's a really big game. He says he's going to be there. He might meet a woman in the pub or not. So go in there, go undercover, and see what he gets up to. So I'm like, well, I can bluff with Bestrom and talk shite about football. So I go in there. So I'm sat down. So I'm sat next to one at locals, and when game comes on, and we're having a chat, and we're jibber jabbering away. And I've done a little bit of research into Sheffield United about like where they were on table and the best player and all that kind of stuff. So I'm jibber jabbering away, and I'm going, oh yeah, and obviously I can't remember the name of players because, like I said, they don't interest me. So I'm like, talk about this player. Oh yeah, they had a right good game. They had blah, blah. So I'm talking away, and this guy looks at me and he's like, "All right, you're a Sheffield United fan, are you? All right, this is a Rotherham United pub." And because the client had said he's a United fan, I just automatically assumed it was Sheffield United because I'm from Sheffield. Then I look around, I'm looking at all these shirts and thinking, actually, yeah. 95% of people in this pub are Rotherham United, and the guy who I was watching was a Rotherham United fan. So I had to then like backtrack and go, well, I'm not really into football, and I've just comfort beer. He says drinking his non-alcoholic beer, and so yeah, that was one of those times where you think never assume that United means Sheffield United when they're playing Rotherham United.
Yeah, almost getting beaten up just by
Yeah,
before you even touch the subject.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
A lot of the stories you spoke about and a lot of the work you do is like the classic boots on the ground, talking to people, surveillance. Since you've started 20 plus years ago, landscape has changed in terms of like digital and a lot of more stuff being online, a lot more answers being online. Obviously, that's
Mhm.
that's that's, that's my capacity of why I work with you.
Yeah.
But just from your perspective, taking mine and your work out of it, how much of your investigation start with a digital trail now before you've even left the car?
So my world is different, and my head is different to different people. I did psychology A level, and I always there's very and when you join the police, I remember doing when I got promoted, they looked at different people and how they plan for things, and the way that my head works, which is obviously what you alluded to on the podcast. When I do my podcast, it's all it's pretty much free flow. I literally write down a couple of words, I'll look at them, and from there, that's where I'm at. So I've gone from a world of finite planning to the way that actually my brain works, where when I get a client, what I do is I send them the most basic of forms, and it'll be what we're investigating, who's the subject, who's subject to, add any other subjects if there are any. And then from that, I need to know where they live and what car they have. And I'll say any other people of interest or any other places of interest. And then it's something like, have you hired a private investigator before? What was the result? And is this person dangerous, or do they hang around with criminals? And it's the most basic of forms. And from that, that is the pretty much the entirety of my planning, which some people out there will look at that and go, oh my God, that is so you're going in there. But what I've found is that with the best planning in the world, it doesn't matter because the subject can just go completely off track, go somewhere else, do something else, meet somebody else. I mean, just given one example about never assume, but you can't assume because you might be dealing with somebody who's having an affair. And I've done one where I'm following a woman, and the partner's assuming that they're having an affair with another man, and they meet another woman, and they're actually bisexual. So you can never head and like, oh, the plan is, oh, they're going to meet somebody at McDonald's. So you're researching McDonald's, and you're researching this, and you're researching that, and it's not. It's just a bullshit story that they've told the client, and actually they're going to go somewhere else, or they're on another typical one is we're having a weekend away at Centre Parks with the girls, and they drive up to the Lake District and meet a man. So I tend to do very little planning beforehand. Like I said, the use of AI. I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to technology, and that's why I use you. Because anything that needs any kind of online reporting, OSINT, any kind of studying, pulling together, I'm like, That's Aaron's work. Send that to you. You do that for me. I'll do the physical sort of stuff."
Just mention AI. I guess it leads perfectly onto the last question I had, so I'll turn it around. AI is changing prime investigations. It's changing a lot of stuff. You sort of touched upon it there, to be honest with you. You sort of answered it. What in the private investigation industry do you think will always need a human, and what's like AI proof about your role?
So I'll just throw it in there on my podcast, either the last one or the one that I did before that. I jokingly said there will come a time where I don't even need to leave the office, and all I'll do is I'll just do an AI. I mean, I call it Photoshop. That's how old I am. I am. So I'll do an AI Photoshop with the subject who they're meant to be having an affair with, and I'll just put them together kissing in a pub location, send it to the client and say, look, I've caught them, and I don't even turn a wheel. And I said it jokingly, and then this week it's come out that somebody in Derbyshire Police has been taken from frontline duties and is under investigation for using AI to create evidence on a case. So that is, whilst I said it flippantly and jokingly, it's actually turned into reality in the space of a few weeks of me saying it. A cop's been put under investigation for using it. And that's a scary world that we live in. So, but that's just an aside. The answer to your question is I don't think AI can ever replace physical surveillance. I mean, you talk about following somebody. I've just sort of said, you don't know where they're going to go. Yeah, we use GPS trackers. We as private investigators can't have access to ANPR cameras or the state cameras. CCTVs and a nightmare. So there's stuff out there, but realistically speaking, in the private sector, you're never going to be able to replace the person on the ground doing the job.
No, I assumed you were going to say something like that, and I would take it a step further as well. As you're one of the only people that like speak authentically on podcasts, and as we move to like more online where trust is an issue, I think like your voice is probably something that will keep you going further essentially and be AI proof.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I mean, I always tell people I lose loads of customers because I'm just honest with them. People ring me up and ask me loads of questions, and I just give them a bout of honesty. But whether that's psychological, and then they come back to me later on in the future because they think he was so honest, he actually lost that job, but I've got another job for him. Because I do get people that come back to me and go, I appreciated your answer last time. What's your take on this? So it does turn into work, but I'm kind of quite moralistic in what I do. I could make loads of money just robbing people blind, and I know that a potential topic that I've got that's on the back burner is there's a couple of companies out there that rip people off as private investigators. You've been involved in some of them. I've shown you the report, which I've still got on my computer because at one point I'm going to read it out verbatim
Yeah.
on one of my podcasts because that was just absolute waffle, made up nonsense. And the client paid 3 times more than what I charged.
That's a very good topic. I was going to touch on it then, but maybe we could save that to your podcast. With yeah, for yourself, even for other people I work B2B with, where you get a report in from, and I have investigation companies' names in my head, which I won't say now. Maybe we'll say
Yeah.
that, where you get the report in, and it's just like we have to completely redo the whole work, and then
Yeah.
half of the job is basically showing the client how you've been ripped off as well. So it's like
Yeah.
they've been done twice. And the AI thing that you're saying about the police officer and deep fakes making evidence, that is going to be more prevalent because people are already doing it
Mm.
now and they don't even have the good enough check. They're just writing absolute nonsense and
Yeah.
just being like, subject is X, Y, and Z with no backing, no nothing. So the AI stuff is going to creep into our industry for worse as well.
Definitely, and there are going to be people there who get AI to write their reports for them.
Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, like I say, I'll read it out verbatim because it was a paragraph, maybe 200 words of absolute gibberish, made no sense whatsoever, and didn't come to a conclusion. And that was a 7-page report that the client had. Um,
Do you have any cases where, for better or for worse, or for ugly or for beauty, that will sit with you forever and a long time? Is there one that you just always going to sit with you and you're not going to shake it?
I think I mean, obviously, I mean, one of my favourite stories to tell in the private industry is the undercover job in the massage parlour, and that's the humorous sort of side of things. But I'll not spoil that here. I'll let people go to my podcast, episode 3, and listen to it. That's one of my favourite stories to tell. I think the stories, the experiences that sit with you for the rest of your life come from the police without a shadow of a doubt. And I talk about mental health and the police, and it's always in the press and what have you. And I think I was quite fortunate in the police that I didn't see too many gruesome sights. As a detective, you're not really a first responder, so you pick the jobs up afterwards and continue them. But there's basically there's two jobs. I know we're meant to keep a short podcast, but you've invited me on, and I talk for England.
Go on, mate.
There's two stories. There's a lot of things that I've seen that are pretty awful, really. One is a child cruelty case where the ambulance were called because they were twins actually, and one of the children was so malnutritioned you couldn't see it breathing. And I'm talking when you see the pictures of Ethiopia and what have you, for those who are old enough to remember Live Aid and what have you, but the children was at such a stage of starvation that they thought the heart had given up, and so they called the ambulance. And I always remember coming on the next morning, and the night detective who was doing the handover, he was ashen, and he was an experienced guy. And I was looked at him, and he'd got no colour. And I saw the photographs of these children, and then we saw the photographs of the house, and one child was locked in a room, and they'd done a dirty protest. They slept, they'd ripped the mattress up and slept on the contents of the mattress. It was just awful, absolutely awful. And I had the displeasure of interviewing the male who was involved. Obviously, they weren't married, but male, female, got these kids. And I interviewed this guy, and my colleague was talking about downstairs. Downstairs was immaculate. Upstairs was something like from the 17th century. It was just outrageous. And so the contrast. So my colleague's talking about, oh, I noticed that you've got a TV and you've got a settee and you've got this and you've got a fish tank. And he's like, yeah, yeah. And he says, oh, your fish tank, I noticed you've got neon tetras. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, they're nice. How long do they live for? Oh, yeah, they live for like 8 weeks or whatever. Oh, yeah. How often do you feed them? He says, I feed them twice a day. I feed them in the morning. I feed them late at night. He says, all right, yeah, yeah, brilliant. He says, how often do you change water? And he's like, oh, well, you need to change water every whatever couple of months, and so you take a third out because obviously you can't change temperature because the tropical fish. So if you take too much water out, it'll kill them with the shock. So you only take like the top bit off, and then and we're going on about this fish tank for must have been like 10, 15. And Solicitor just sort of she's shaking her head. And she's like, and she said, officer, can I just stop you there? What the hell has this fish tank got to do with this case? And he leant in and he said, I'll tell you what it's got to do with this case. Your client takes more care of those fish and looks after those fish. He knows when to feed, when to change the water, when to do this, when to do that. And he's telling me that he doesn't look after his children and he's not fed his children to a state of starvation. And the solicitor realised what she'd said and she just withdrew and thought she just dropped a right bollock. And so had he by talking 10 minutes about how he cares for his fish and then his children upstairs were in absolute depravity. And I remember that we got to the charging desk, and when he was charged with child cruelty, the guy went to pass out, and a natural reaction when somebody's passing out is to grab hold of them. And I just looked at this guy and I thought, you can just fall on the floor and bang it on the floor for yeah, yeah. I know it's the wrong thing to do, but I just looked at him, and it was one of the few times where you go, nah. Nah, if you're going to pass out and crack your head, just do it. So that was one, and then another really morbid story that always lives with me. So there's something out there called a sudden and unexpected death in an infant, also known as cot death. And there was a woman who had a child, and she'd made the mortal mistake of going to sleep with the child on her chest. As anybody who's got children are always told, you never ever go to bed with your child. You always put them in their own cot. They're always on the back, facing up. And she woke up in the morning and the child had suffocated in a bosom, and I had to arrest her for manslaughter, and then she had to then be photographed. Obviously, she was female, so I wasn't stood next to her when she was searched and photographed. But she was being well. I was there for the photographs, but when she got strip searched, obviously I left the cell. And that always sits with me because you just think somebody's just lost a child in the most tragic of circumstances and preventable circumstances, and now they're being arrested on suspicion of manslaughter and being treated like a criminal with photographs and swabs. And then I had to go to the autopsy. And at the time of going to the autopsy, I'd got young children as well. And that's when I talk about compartmentalizing trauma that you've suffered in your life, sticking it in a box, and you don't bring it up because you start bringing it up. Some people talk about the traumas and it helps them. I stick mine in a box and don't talk about them. So yeah, you see some things being a police officer.
It really sort of sticks out there as like the human intelligence aspect of that, which you're talking about, and like the reading people, and in the most like harrowing, crazy situations like that, where you have to be the one to like cut through the noise and the anxiety and the adrenaline to like really read the situation, which is incredibly hard. I've been on the other end of that where I've been questioned, and like you fold as a person in those situations. So that in itself is an incredible skill. And yeah, I think the children is a hot topic at the moment. Obviously, the big cases in the news about the couple that adopted the baby and that. So yeah, yeah.
You can't. I always remember being at training school, and one of the questions of the tutors, they stood there and they said, "You can ask us anything." And one of the questions was, "How do you interview a rapist? How do you not lean over the table and smash the face in?" And then the sergeant at the time was like, "Well, he didn't say it's just a job because it's not, but it's a job and you do it to the best of your abilities." And I've interviewed rapists, and you do want to smash the face in. I mean, the child cruelty person, I could have happily smashed him in and never got tired of punching him. But the way that you do it is by sending them to prison, by getting justice, by doing the best job that you possibly can, and getting the evidence, gathering the evidence, and putting a case forward for the prosecutors and putting that person in prison. That guy, the maximum sentence was 10 years for child cruelty back in those days. I don't know if it's changed. And they both got 10 years. So that is where I get my reward. That is when I come away and go, that's a job well done. If they'd have walked, that would have been on my conscience. So you have to remain professional and put your emotions to one side and think, I'll get you another way.
For sure.
Do it that way. So yeah, that's kind of what you got to do.
Well, there's a big difference between ethical and like legal. So like ethically, if you punched him, I think the crowd consensus should be on your side. No one really give a
Yeah.
shit. But then
Yeah.
obviously that's illegal, and then you disrupt the legal process, and the legal process is where the punishment is. So it is, I mean, it's not actually a tricky situation to navigate when you think about it logically. I guess is that the headline takeaway from that.
Yeah. I mean, I have I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were talking about. I mean, obviously, I have feet in different worlds. I do private investigation, I do enforcement, and what have you. But I have conversations with people with the amount of money that they've spent to prove something or to recover something or whatever. They could have spent less money to hired somebody to go and do something physical to the person, shall we say? And again, like I say, because I've come from the right side of the law, but obviously I watch a lot of TV, and you watch these gangster films and what have you, and sometimes your mind drifts off to, I think that's what it was. We were talking about I had a client that owed me some money. And you sit there and you think, I could just go around and what could I do? So I'd need to leave my phones at home because obviously they get tracked, and I wouldn't go in my own car because they're ANPR. So I'd then have to and you start planning the perfect, not almost a murder, but like I just want to go around and scratch the car up or deflate the tires or something minor. And then my head starts drifting off into how to, and then you bring yourself back and you go, no, actually, I'm a lawful citizen. It's just a flight of fantasy, and I'll get my money later. I'll just send a rather angry email, which is generally what I do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'll just be passive aggressive.
yeah. So I sent him an email. Are you not paying this invoice? I'm just working out my next stages of debt recovery. That was
Yeah,
the
well,
sum total.
it's like the classic thing. Like you are like the sum of the people that you hang around with, and like unfortunately, like, sometimes the industry you work with, our focus a lot of time is on bad people, and then those thoughts creep in, and then obviously we specialize in a skill which probably could be used to do things like that. So it's the brain, particularly for our industry, and people put us on a pedestal as well when it's like private investigations. They just sort of see us as these like really cool movie characters. So like
Yeah.
sometimes your ego runs away with you, and then you're like, oh wait, no, I'm a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, we've all got a book inside us, and I know I come close sometimes to writing a book and kind of basing it on what I've done and the truth, and then slightly embellishing it
Of course.
by turning it into like I took down a drugs gang or a grooming group or something like that, because I think sometimes some of the situations that I do get in do tell a good story. So you just need to push it that little bit further, really. But yeah, we've all got a book in us, I believe.
True crime, mate. Everyone loves a bit of true crime, and it literally is the truest of true crime from people that are just sort of like seeing it firsthand. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'll ask you the last question because I feel like me and you could chat for days. To be fair,
yeah.
and it's more around the private investigations industry as a whole. The question is about the biggest problem you see within the industry, but rather than we go down the sort of route we've already spoke about with the AI and like the corruption of it, more on what's it, the biggest problem in the private investigation industry that if you could solve would give you the biggest opportunity for growth. So what could be solved to propel you forward?
I think for me, GDPR data, and I understand that it is correctly, there's laws around it and what have you. I talked about this a couple of months ago on my podcast about doing CCTV, data requests, subject access requests, just trying to get partners to work with you. and in the private industry, it's even harder than the police. I mean, I remember when I was in the police, you could pretty much get anything that you wanted. The only time that we couldn't is when we had like reports of a shooting or a stabbing, and you'd ring A&E and say somebody just come in with a gunshot wound, and they'd just say we can't tell you, and you're like, yeah, but we just had a report that somebody's being shot. It could be either a murder or an attempted murder, and we can't tell you, patient confidentiality, and you'd like pull your hair out. That was about the only time we got blocked in the police. Whereas in the private industry, people just, I did an inquiry the other month for somebody who'd been seriously assaulted, aggravated, grievous bodily harm in town, and everybody just, no, you're not having our CCTV. You're not having anything, not having any information. And the CCTV was almost lost because the pub where it happened, I basically said to them, okay, then I don't want it, but can you at least burn it off and save it for the officers? Because this was day 27 and the CCTV dropped off after 28 days and nobody had visited the pub. And so they burnt it off. And then I think either 2 or 3 weeks later, the cop eventually went to the pub to recover the CCTV. So 6, 7 weeks after the incident was the first opportunity that the officer in charge of the case had to go to the pub to recover the CCTV. And you just think, I mean, opinions aside about the police, whether it's incompetence or understaffing, and I think on this case it's probably both. Because in my day, there's no way you'd have just not got round to getting CCTV. I mean, to be fair, it should have been on the night, because you can do a CCTV trawl of where they've gone from the pub, plot all the other pubs that they've gone past, look for all the other CCTV. The town hall CCTV covers people. That could have been solved within 24 hours. I mean, there's a bloody program called the first 48 hours, which is the golden rule. In the police, that's what we call the golden rule. That's where that's where you're going to get most of the evidence in the first 48 hours. After that, you start losing it. So I think that's the biggest thing that holds me back, is data sharing and data from other people.
Yeah, UK specifically with data. I've inadvertently found myself a bit of an expert with this, just because of the world I live in, and issues that occur when you don't do it correctly. Because data is dangerous in the wrong hands. But like the point you're making is we're trying to use it to help good people. But yeah, that's a tricky one that I don't see getting any easier either, to be honest with you.
It would just get harder.
Yeah,
Just get harder. Because we do get inquiries from criminals / people with bad intention.
for sure.
And
For
again,
sure.
I talk about this. Certainly, when it comes to, I need to track down my partner. You, as a private investigator, you've always got to ask the question, why? Why you want it? And the people who have already rang around other private investigators and been turned down because they've worked out it's not for the best of reasons will then come to you eventually, and we're already get past your first 3 or 4 questions of why. Oh, well, we've got a child together and I need access rights, and I've got a solicitor, and my solicitor says that I need to hire you in order to serve a legal letter, and blah, blah, blah. And it's where you take it from there. And I think being a former police officer helps, because you get the feeling, you get the sixth sense, and you get to ask those extra questions of, okay, then, well, who's your solicitor? What company are they? I'll just drop them a quick email just to double check that you've instructed them. And it's at that point where they then, and you found them out to be liars. And like I said, I could easily make money out of that person and give them the details, but it doesn't sit right with me. So I'd rather sleep easy at night and earn less money than have loads of money, but worry about the cops with the big red key hoofing your door in at 5 o'clock in the morning and seizing my computers and phones and stuff because I've got involved with the wrong types. There's a story there somewhere, isn't there, Aaron?
Yeah, allegedly. It works out less money for you in the end, because if you're working with bad people, it's going to ruin your business. Whereas if you just keep to your morals, then your business has a lot more longevity. So in the long run, it works out a lot better. But final sign off, mate. Just over to you. If you want to plug anything, let anyone know how to connect with you, or where to touch base with you.
Yeah, well, got the t-shirt on. Dollars Investigations. That's the name of the company. I'm based sort of Sheffield Doncaster area, but I cover cover anywhere within 40, 50 square miles of that, which covers the north of England. I've got reach up and down the country, as we all have. If you want to get a hold of me, I would signpost you to my podcast, which is Diary of a Private Investigator. From that, there is an email address of diaryofaprivateinvestigator@gmail.com. So if you want to ask me any questions, then by all means. I am on TikTok, but I might be giving that up soon because that's a young person's platform and it doesn't really attract any customers, which is ultimately why I'm out on social media. And obviously I'm on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, I think I'm the only Nathan Hoole in the entire country. I'm easy to trace. I mean, you'll find me on LinkedIn.
Fortunately, unfortunately, because I have a very unique name. So my last name is Barnes Wilden, and I never put it online. And then you have business, and you're like, oh, do you know what? Finally, it's like it comes in handy. So yeah,
Yeah,
I do the same. It's a blessing and a curse. But yeah,
yeah,
Nathan, thank you very much for coming on today. I think obviously we've been friends for a while and we spoke quite a while, but I never really quite understood the level of like the human intelligence aspect of that goes in for into work. I think you're a bit disarming sometimes where you have every time we have a conversation, it's like you're at the pub. But then when you actually deep dive into the psychology of it, yeah, I find it really interesting. And I think you're very switched on. And I think you're pretty AI proof on the back of it. So I look forward to our podcast and obviously future work, mate.
yeah. No problems. Thanks for having me on. Hope it goes well.
All the best, mate. Take it easy.
All right. Speak to you soon, buddy.